Yes, yes. Good morning once again. And so we are talking today about purpose or results. How do you validate your life? And I use the word validate on purpose because a lot of us quantify our lives through our results. But how do you validate your life? How do you give it meaning? How do you give it, how do you know you're on track? And I'll tell you something. One of the thoughts that occurred to me about the topic for today is that there have been times in our lives when we have been externally oriented, yeah, and then there are times in our lives when we are internally oriented. I have heard it said, and I think it's attributable to Toni Morrison, the late great Toni Morrison, when she's been quoted as saying, there are years that ask the questions, and then there are years that answer them. And I don't know, I think maybe over the past few years, we have all been through some kind of question period. Maybe you questioned what you're doing here, or what you're living for, or what's the purpose of your life, or maybe you thought, what's the purpose of this panorama, this pandemic? What's the purpose of this political climate? What's the right? And what's my role in it? I've been recently helping a friend of mine with her PhD dissertation. And even though she's really good about the writing aspect of it, she would prefer somebody else do the literature research, right? And Lord have mercy, do I love literature research. So I have been like, with all her books and stuff and just going through it and taking notes and collating them for a cogent thought, etc. And one of the books that I have been lucky enough to have read in supporting her in this conversation is Who Do We Choose to Be by Margaret Wheatley. Who Do We Choose to Be by Margaret Wheatley. Facing Reality, Claiming Leadership, Restoring Sanity. And oh my gosh, it is such a thick book. And I promise you, don't get the audio, okay? Don't get the Kindle. Get the actual book, sit down with it, um, dare to highlight and take notes on the margins and things like that. Because the conversation for you will be, I hope, as it has been for me, who do you say that you are in this world, in this society, in this particular generation, for such a time as this? Who do you say that you are? And I love that she takes us through this conversation of identity, because a lot of times the way that we say that we are in the world has a lot to do with who we say that we are, not our behaviors, mind you, right? Not our behaviors, not even a conceptual purpose, but who we say that we are. And when you consider, for example, the labels that we hoist upon ourselves, maybe you have the label of parent, mother, father. Maybe you have the label of spouse, husband, wife. Maybe you have the label of problem solver, right? And so when you think about some of the labels that we accept or assign to ourselves, they carry with them the conditions and the circumstances that you will find yourself in. For example, calling yourself a problem solver just means that in order to justify your existence, you must have problems, because that's what you do, you solve them, right? Calling yourself a parent implies that you must have some kind of offspring somewhere. Somebody's your child, such that you would be somebody's parent, right? And so I think about the act, the authority defying, identity claiming act of defining yourself. And that's really germane to the conversation of purpose or results, how do you validate your life? Because if all that you are is a series of accumulated behaviors or habits or results or achievements, that's a different conversation than having an inherent or a self-assigned identity. And then from there comes the purpose, from there comes the results, etc. So I wanted to unpack this conversation with you because I don't have an angle. It's not a rhetorical question. It's not a setup for a teaching or a lesson. it's an iterative, what do you call those things? I said it's not a rhetorical question, but it's like a becomingness, right? Like your answer might change depending on what phase of life you're in. So I want to talk about it with you. How do you validate your life? Maybe you validate it through the relationships that you're in, the people that you're associated with, the titles, the position. If we were at your funeral, for example, and we were eavesdropping on what people were saying about you, what would you want them to say? How would you want them to describe you? That's the question. So, who wants to share in this here family meeting? Yes, yes, Laura.
Good morning. Good morning,
Good morning.
family. How do I validate my life? I used to validate my life by working hard, showing up, being a workaholic. That was what I was conditioned to do. And I used to share knowledge. It was a way, I think, of me trying to prove myself worthy. Yes, I was well, people pleaser. I'm work in progress with that because I needed validation. I needed to be seen, to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Those are some of the ways, and I'm happy that you touched this because now that I am not out there working, sometimes I do feel like might be, I'm just lost sometimes. I feel lost.
Lost, you said?
Yeah, because I'm not doing the things I used to do to get the validation. Now to deal with myself, it's difficult. Thank you. I'm complete.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah, because sometimes we try to fit into an old paradigm and we find that sometimes we no longer fit in those paradigms. So then the question becomes, well, is the paradigm outdated or am I? Right? It's like, which one is out of place here? And that's what I hear in what you're asking, Laura. And thank you so much for bringing that up because a lot of times we get to design that, we get to create that. Who else has
Yes.
Who else?
You have a great ability to sit and wait for people to answer. I don't know how you do it. You just wait it out. All right. So restate the question again. I'll give it my best answer.
My question is, where do you find yourself? How do you find yourself validating your life? Through your purpose, through your results? And of course, a corollary question to that is, how do you come up with that? How do you come up with that purpose or those results?
It's kind of funny that you asked what we would want people to say at our funeral, because I used to teach leadership workshops to students, and that was one of the exercises that we went through.
Oh,
Therefore,
wow. Okay.
yeah, I thought I should be a student of my teaching, so I've always known what my values are. And they've changed over the years. Like hardworking used to be one of them. Now, the top three are sincere, joyful, and accountable. And so I don't know that I feel like my purpose is measurable like it used to be, very much like what Laura was saying. I used to just be this like hard charging, I call pleasure stacking queen, where I was just doing the things, going hard. I took a lot of pride in that. But now it's deep, quality, honest relationships, I think, that are at the core of what brings me joy and what I want out of this life. And I hope I give back to those people.
Oh, I love that. Love that. I want it to be said about me that I awakened people to their own divinity.
To their own what?
Divinity.
Oh, nice.
And I think that's broad enough, vague enough to encompass careers and roles and jobs and volunteer places and relationships, et cetera, because the sandbox, the playground upon which you exercise and embody your purpose isn't tethered to an occupation or a profession or a relationship. And even the relationship itself changes form, like the ones that we have with our children. Sometimes our children need us differently when they're, 2, 3, 7, 17, than when they're 37, right? 47. And maybe we'd be so blessed as to live long enough to see that. So my invitation in this conversation is to have you look at what is the common thread that has been, or maybe like a theme, a concept or a theme that has been the common thread in how you've lived your life. Like, as we begin to unpack this, right? So the question is a false positive, or I should say a false duality, because those aren't the only things to consider, purpose or results. But it's a good place to start. And then when you go deeper and you look into that, it's like, well, what would be my purpose such that I would pick purpose in that question, right? Or what would be my results such that I would pick my results in that question? And sometimes we don't have any results that we like to brag about. Sometimes our results are like, I'd rather you not look at my results. I would rather not. I don't want to even look at them. I don't want you looking at them. Don't investigate me. And what's the benchmark for that? What's the metric for that? I remember having a conversation with someone who was so impactful in my life that I had the temerity to say, as though I was in charge of the past, present, and future, and I could just arbitrarily say, if you do nothing else in this life except take up oxygen and space, it will have been a life well lived because of the impact that you've had already heretofore. You don't have to do another thing in order to earn the space that you take up on this planet. And, it was okay, it was beautiful and moving and all this other stuff, but how do you know that? How do you know? I mean, like, what's the metric that divine intelligence uses to say you're not done yet? Because there are people who get struck by lightning and they die and they just go off to the next incarnation. And then there's the people who are still here and not doing anything useful per our standards, and they're still here taking up space. So what's the metric? You know what I mean? And that's the conversation that we're having today, right? Like, what are the results of your life, and what is the purpose of your life, such that you feel good to stand on it. Rose, I see your hand up. She said, "This early, Lord, hand me the tequila."
I'll tell you, these conversations, Dr. Monica, are just, I mean, so amazing. So I want to say two things. The first thing I want to say is, say what they will. I just want them to come.
Mm-hmm.
I just want them to be there.
Yeah.
Because, I've had this habit, I guess, of leaving. So I'll create a community, create amazing results in a particular area, and then I move and I leave it all behind, and I start again. And I go off and I do something completely different in a whole nother community, and I create, again, a lot of like really admirable results. And then I move and I leave it all behind. I don't stay in touch. You know what I mean? And so here I am. I'm like, okay, I have a new community, but it's only this big. But I've impacted thousands of people if I put them all together.
Yeah.
So, I just want them to come. And I don't even know, like, gosh, will they even know when who will know when I've actually gone away, or, oh, I didn't know that Rose left 7 years ago. How could I not have known that? Right. But anyway, so that's my thought on one side of my brain. The other side of my brain is still so stuck in the conversation last week that I'm kind of re-analyzing re-looking at the
conversation we had on today, on Thursday?
On the huddle. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you open the refrigerator and the Grand Canyon's inside and you go, what the?
Right. Yeah.
Like that.
Yes.
That conversation was like that for me. And the part of that conversation was, why did it just go? I mean, it was so I guess I don't want to deal with it. It was so steering. Well, okay, what if all there is me?
Yeah.
Has me taking complete accountability for every single thing in my life in a way that I've never even felt in the core of my being before.
My goodness.
And so if that's the case, this whole purpose conversation, I can't find a place for it yet.
Right. Because we haven't settled the foundational question.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So that's what's going on the other side of my head, right? So there I am. I called Sorrel. I said, I got to talk to Dr. Monica. She just blew me away. I don't know what to do. I don't know. And then he said, sure. He sent me your email address.
Yes.
And I don't know what to say.
Oh, well, this is a good place to start.
That's why I'm here.
This feels like the prologue to Genesis. We haven't even gotten to Deuteronomy in the Bible. It's like the prologue to Genesis. Like in the beginning was, well, that's John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Right? That's a different book.
But I'm standing there. It's like, okay, yes, it's like Monopoly. Go back to go.
Yes. Well, they're different. You have no idea how perfect that analogy is, because the only way to go back to
choose my token. You're telling me, do you want to be a boot? Do you want to be a house? Do you want to be a car? I'm like, I don't know yet.
Yes. Yeah, because sometimes we don't even know that we have that choice. It's like the mind blown moment that I had with Reverend Dr. Mary Tumpkin when I went to her office, having had a stage 4 cervical cancer diagnosis. And she said, well, which conversation are we having? Are you getting ready to live or are you getting ready to die? I was like, wait, hold on. I didn't even know that was a choice. And you're telling me I got to make that choice today, right now, before your next meeting? Give me a second, So I totally relate. I can totally relate.
So that's right.
And then what does it mean? Why is it such a momentous decision such that it causes such pause? Because if I am all there is, to your point about last week's session, if there's nobody out there but me, and I am meeting just versions and aspects and angles of myself, then the purpose is what I say it is. And the validation benchmarks are what I say they are. And I reserve the right to change my mind at any time and move the goalposts at any time. We do this all the time, by the way. You know, I think the revolutionary act, this is why I talked earlier about identity being revolutionary work, because it's not the naming it that is revolutionary. It is the acknowledging to ourselves that that's what we're doing that is revolutionary. Because you've been naming yourself since you had capacity of language, right? When you were a toddler and somebody asked you, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm being a fireman, or I'm being a mommy, or I'm playing house, or I'm the teacher, or I'm the da da da. When I grow up, I'm gonna be this and that and the third, and like we just come up with stuff to identify, to name ourselves. Oh my gosh, how liberating that this isn't a skill to develop, but a gift to remember. How liberating that you don't have to go looking for a purpose. You just have to gather evidence of the purpose you've already been living into. Huh? Look, and this is the non-fasted version, okay? We're past January. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing to hang on to here except our own wits. So if you've already been doing this, what's so scary? Oh, what's so scary about admitting it? Because now I feel like a 5-year-old mama's coming home and she found out that I did not take the meat out of the refrigerator, and I'm afraid it's gonna be a whooping. Like, what do you think is gonna happen to your hide such that you don't want the responsibility of self-naming that you've already been doing? So it's like almost cop into a crime. Oh, child. What do you think? What do you think about this? Process out loud. Laura says, my purpose is only to be of service to others, using my lived experience to impact their lives positively. I love that. Now, see, there's efficacy of effort. I don't know if somebody named it that, but that's what occurs to me in the moment. So if that's a trademarkable situation, let me know and I'll file it. But there's some efficacy, economy of effort. That's what I want to say. Economy of effort. And what I'm referring to is this idea that that everything that we do and who we are, all of it are threads in that quilt of our lives, of our identity, of our purpose, of what we're here to do. How do I know what I'm here to do? Because I'm doing it. I don't have to invent it. This is, by the way, not like the truth with a capital cosmic T. I'm just kind of inviting you into this conversation and then kind of massaging it with you. But since you ain't jumping in, I'm going to talk. So there's like, I don't have to invent a new behavior. I don't have to invent a lofty purpose. I can just see that I'm living my purpose just by breathing. Like I told my mentor that time, it's like, if you do nothing else except take up space and oxygen, it will have been a life well lived. And perhaps the revolutionary act of self-naming is to own that power, to own that responsibility, to own that infinity, to own that blank canvas, because there's nothing written on it except what we say goes on it. Yeah. And wow, the power and the possibility in that vastness. That you get to decide that moment by moment, day by day, relationship by relationship, decade by decade, situation by situation. The power in naming it, though, is that there's an anchor that you can ground yourself with. If I dare to say, as I have, that the purpose of my life is to awaken people to their divinity, do you see how there are some choices that are just now no longer available to me? Like, I can't be ratchet the way that I want to be if you're going to be out here awakening people to their divinity, child. Now ratchet has a purpose. Now ratchet has a strategy. We can't just be willy-nilly ratchet. It's got to be, divine. It's got to be twerking is a spiritual practice. It's not just you going crazy in the club, So there's like this North Star that you get from self-naming, from self-identifying, from self-assigning a purpose to your life. And some of that we see in hindsight, right? Like when you start to look at your 0 to 7, we've done some 0 to 7 work here. Obviously, we don't delve into it as quickly, as deeply as we can, because we only have half an hour at a time. But when you see what you've lived in your 0 to 7, in your childhood, in your adolescence, in your early adulthood, et cetera, and you start to stack the patterns, like, oh, I've been doing X, Y, Z all along. And you get enough lived experience in you, like Laura says, using my lived experience to impact their lives positively. And Cece says, the purpose is to be of service to God and people and share testimony of truth to verify the supernatural truths of God. So you see how defining and self-naming a purpose allows you to clarity for what to say yes to and no to, and the brand in which you engage in certain behaviors or practices. So listen, Rose, we're gonna add that to the homework, to the journal prompts. We're gonna say, and feel free to send me an email, because I do want to continue this conversation with you. I'm gonna say, given that we are self-defining at all times, the way you validate your life is the way you validate your life at any given time. You may hang on to purpose on certain times, and then maybe some days you may hang on to results. Maybe the results are a pathway to your purpose, and maybe your purpose are a pathway to your results. Depends on where you're standing. But either way, in the wise words of a 2004 billboard in Miami from Citibank, you were born pre-approved. So you don't have to validate nothing. I'll leave you with that. If I had a mic, I'd drop it. So thank you, everybody, for being here at the Daily Huddle. And please remember, don't be like me, okay? Get you at least 6-7 hours of sleep, 8-9 preferably. All right? Don't try to nap your way through life. It's not gonna work. It's not sustainable. And stress less, eat more plant-based, give of yourself, your life, your energy, your attention, your joy, your intelligence, your passion, your laugh generously. Yeah. Move, of course, as I said, twerking is a spiritual exercise. I kid you not. You should try it someday. And then finally, audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. In auditing your assumptions, you engage the creative acts of intelligence, which are questions. And you'll have a much richer life for it. So thanks, everybody. We love you. See you next time. Bye.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Dad.
Naming is a safekeeping practice. Thank you for the magical thing. Oh, I like that.